What if the key to unlocking your full potential lies in the union of your mind and emotions? You're listening to or watching the Sedona Soul Sisters Show, where we share psychic guidance and healing for embodied spiritual awakening. I'm Christel, and I am on a mission to support spiritual practitioners to access your intuition, unlock your psychic gifts, and live your purpose. A big thanks to all our listeners all over the world, and a special shout out to our listeners in Stavanger, Norway. One of the things that I delight in doing before I record a podcast episode is scrolling through the list of locations from the previous episode. And while I am doing that, I am sending energetic love, support, and inspiration to each of you in those locations. So while I only mention one, I am literally sending a boost of love to every single one of you. I'm so grateful. You can schedule sessions in West Sedona or virtual psychic readings, angel readings, starseed readings, Akashic recodes, soul contract work, Reiki, and life coaching at sedonasoulsisters.com. Each breath you take aligned with love repairs the healing web on planet Earth. Our minds and emotions are intrinsically intertwined, shaping our experiences and perceptions of the world around us. On today's episode, we're exploring the profound healing that lies within the integration of these two aspects of our being. And we'll talk about it in many ways: the mental and emotional bodies, the masculine and feminine, the elements of water and ether. We'll journey through the realms of the emotional body, learning to embrace the process of emotions in a healthy manner while fostering self-compassion and emotional resilience. Through this integrative approach, we'll uncover the synergy that exists when we harmonize our mental and emotional states, paving the way for profound healing, personal growth, and a deeper connection to our authentic selves. Let's begin with an intention setting. I invite you to place one hand on your belly and one hand on your heart. If it feels good for you, close your eyes. Deepen your breath. Bring yourself more fully into this moment, into this breath. And as we are working on the mental and emotional bodies today, we're specifically working with the second chakra, the sacral chakra, below the navel and above your pubic bone, relating to the element of water, the emotional body. It is a feminine aspect of our being, whereas the mental body, we're working predominantly with the third eye, the sixth chakra, related to the element of ether and a masculine essence. May each one of us feel empowered, connected, and deeply aligned with discovering the truth of these aspects of ourselves and learning to work in partnership with the feminine and masculine essence and principles, working with our emotions and our mental capacity, working in harmony with our full system for embodied spiritual awakening. I have many people ask what embodied spiritual awakening means. And what it means in the lineage that I practice and teach is bringing our infinite and divine selves into our human bodies, into our human experiences on planet Earth. So it is integrating our physical, tangible bodies with our divine, infinite self. Let's begin by looking at the conditioning that we receive that sets the stage for our relationship with first the emotional body and then with our mental capacity. In general, in our culture, girls and women are given greater space to explore and be in our emotional bodies. Unfortunately, the repetitive patterns of our emotional bodies often lead us to feeling disempowered by our emotions, overwhelmed by our emotions, needing to try to control or dominate or diminish them. Whereas what we are working with aligning is the power of the emotional body as life force energy, as creative power that is fluid, changeable, and infinitely powerful. The water element on Earth does so much in nourishing our bodies, right? We have to have water to survive. It is also incredibly powerful. If you have ever been in a strong current, whether that was in a river or an ocean, you know the great power of water, as well as the power of water to carve the landscape. We'll take the Grand Canyon, for example. Over millions of years, the water shaped the land. And also looking at the element of rain as an incredible power to nourish. And also when the power of the rain is out of balance, it can create flooding and mudslides. Here we're talking about the different extremes, the great power of water to create and the power of water to destroy. And this is true of our emotional bodies. If we come into greater harmony with our emotional bodies, we can utilize the creative power of our emotions to create, to direct, to inspire. Or if we don't learn the skills of working with the emotions and we just keep repeating the unhealthy emotional patterns, we will stay stuck in experiences that are less than desirable. In looking at the mental capacity, the mental body, which in this framework we're working with the sixth chakra, the third eye, which is both the intellect and the intuition. And similar to the emotional body, our intelligence, our intellect has incredible capacity to be creative, to look for solutions, to communicate, to do so many incredibly powerful things in the world. And also our minds can literally make our lives difficult to manage. When we are stuck in repetitive mental patterns, what I often call the monkey mind on this show, it can run us into the ground and leave us feeling exhausted and lost and overwhelmed. And so there's similarity in both of the aspects of healing that we're working with today. In general, the dominant conditioning of the mental body is boys and men are given greater capacity and free range to be leaders in this world. And this, of course, is changing, but part of it is to say that there's a long way to come into bringing each person into their own unique genius, in being able to reach a level of capacity, understanding, and mastery of both our emotional and mental bodies. And we've all received different conditioning, right? There's a dominant cultural conditioning, but then there's also conditioning of your family and different things. That is important to look at in order to give yourself compassion for some of the things that are repeating patterns that have likely been happening for decades. It's like, okay, this is how it is set. Yet what we're focused on, while I do mention these unhealthy patterns and conditioning systems, the main thing that we're focusing on in this episode is being able to pull ourselves out of those unhealthy patterns of both the mental and emotional bodies and to create new patterns, to create what I would call a divine marriage of the emotional and mental bodies, the masculine and feminine within, to work with the elements of water and space together powerfully to create positive change in your own life, in your community, and in the world. Next, I want to talk about the dominant energy of the healthy element of space and masculine power and presence is a vertical axis, up and down, while the element of water, the feminine power, is spreading out. So in order to come into a healthier relationship with both of these principles and elements is we are looking at the way that water and emotions move is spreading out and taking over a space. So it's important in being able to pull our energy back in and spread it out at will, rather than being taken over by emotions and your emotional body isn't under your conscious control. The same thing is true of the mental body, that it's when the mental body starts spiraling or spinning out of control or in a loop, is going up and down, is coming into the column of spirit in your own physical body and grounding down and reaching high up to move out of the spiraling overwhelm of energy of the mental body. So these are important elements to be able to work with when we're working with the emotional body, noticing that the emotional body can push out, push into other people, fill certain spaces, that we want to be able to work with the great power of the emotional body without it taking over control. So being able to work with the pulsation of the emotional body, work with directing the flow of the water element, the emotional body, is essential in changing the patterns. Our minds and our whole systems repeat patterns. It just wants to do the same thing, even if it isn't serving us in creating a better life. It's just looking for habits, it's looking for survival, and not changing is the way that our brains survive. So what we're talking about here is working with the conscious energy becomes your practice of working with the mental and emotional bodies, is working with these elements. And it's much easier to do this when you're not triggered. Your system isn't in a fight or flight state. With practice, you will be able to work with these energetic elements when you are in an activated state or you are triggered. But at first, I encourage you to work with them when you are in a more calm state. So let's begin with the emotional body, the element of water. Bring the attention to your lower belly. You can even place your hands on your belly below the navel, above your pubic bone, and breathe deeply into your belly, into your body. Bring someone to mind that you are in a good state with. And one easy place to do this is if you have a pet, because sometimes the people we love, we can be in a state of having challenges with. But I want you to create an emotional experience in your body, a positive emotional experience in your body. And notice how you can expand the feeling. Let your emotional body expand. And if it feels challenging for you to expand your emotional body, just imagine it. Imagine like water spreading out on the floor. You're pouring water on the floor and it's spreading out all over the floor. Imagine that happening. And then imagine that you're magically able to pull the energy back into the cup that you were pouring it from. This is the practice of creating an emotional experience in your body and letting it expand. And now with your mental focus, I want you to imagine some project that you are working on that is going well, and you can clearly see the next steps for you to take. And imagine yourself getting more grounded in the action that needs to be taken. And you're also reaching up higher and higher for greater and greater inspiration. So this practice of being able to move into our sensing, feeling, emotional state, expanding our feminine presence, we all have the capacity to expand our emotional body and to bring our energy up into our vertical column. So this practice of being able to move fluidly from one to the other has so many powerful energetic uses. I encourage you to play with it in low risk situations. Like we just worked with emotional and mental situations where things are going well. One way you can begin to cultivate your practice of being able to tap into the power of the water element, the power of your emotions, is to go back in time. And I encourage you to do this with items that are not that far back and also not supercharged, because it is a practice. And one of the challenges that I see so often when people are trying to work through emotional challenges from the past is they go back in the past and then they keep rehearsing the same emotional or mental patterns, which keep them stuck in the same patterns, replaying over and over and over again. So let's imagine that I had a challenge with one of my neighbors that created a charge in my system that I felt emotionally exhausted by. I felt sad. I felt uncertain about how to bring peace back to the situation. Imagining that this didn't happen that long ago, I can allow the expansion of my emotional experience to feel the different emotions that I was feeling, but then to move my energy into the vertical energy, into the column of spirit to get more grounded, and then seek inspiration above. So now I am bringing together an emotional experience with my mental capacity to look for solutions. And this is where we can work with the mental and emotional bodies together to create a greater experience, rather than what most often happens is we get overwhelmed by the emotional and mental bodies and we just keep spinning in the same circle and cycle. So at first, going back into different scenarios and imagining how you would do it differently and actually acting it out. Being in the scene, being in the situation, feeling what you felt, thinking what you thought, and then shifting into what I would like to have felt, what I would like to have thought. And then, ideally, you can speak from an empowered place just with yourself, right? Like in the example I just shared, I was talking about an imaginary conflict with my neighbor. But then when I come to this point of creating a new empowered pathway, working with the emotional and mental body, then I'm actually going to practice saying what feels aligned. I feel stressed and overwhelmed by this situation. I really want both of us to enjoy being neighbors, and I want to be able to navigate this conflict in a way that both of us feel better, more clear, and good about moving forward together. So that is working with, right? I named the emotional experience, but then I was using the power of my intellect to come together and be on the same team with someone that I'm having a conflict with. This is the great power of being able to use the grounded power of our presence and reaching for inspiration from our divine selves and bringing it through our energetic systems to bring that out into the world. We just worked with an example that was from a recent experience and looking at how to integrate the mental and emotional bodies for the best possible outcome. These are the kinds of practices I encourage you to start with low risk, low charge events, but they matter to you. But we're not looking for something that's like a 16 out of 10 on the stress scale. Start with situations, challenges that you are facing that are lower on the stress scale so that you can practice with working with the emotional capacity and your mental capacity to create the kind of relationships that you want to create in going forward. And working with your energy and being able to spread out your energy, to being able to bring your energy into your column of spirit, the up and down energy. Beginning with events that are not that far back and are low charge, and then increasing your capacity as you can. One of the things where you know you have stretched beyond what you are currently capable of navigating is you find yourself stuck in an emotional habit loop or a mental habit loop where you are just repeating the same experience that you've had for whatever period of time. It is possible to do this with highly charged situations from the past, yet it is super important to be clear what the outcome is that you desire before you bring your consciousness back to an event that was challenging from the past. This practice of working with the mental and emotional bodies are integrating a lot of different practices. It is energy healing. It is also working with mental capacity. It is working with timelines and so many powerful healing modalities. A really common pattern I see in both men and women is a mental override, which is a masculine override, an unhealthy expression of masculine energy, and an emotional collapse or a feminine energy collapse. And these two feed into each other, right? That it's like there's this override pattern going on in the mind. The mind is spinning until it gets so exhausted, and then the body, the emotions collapse. And this pattern is common in both men and women because it's part of what the dominant culture has trained us to do, is to try and figure it out in our mental body and to override our emotions. So one of the things I encourage you to notice in your own life is when you are in a state of mental override or overwhelm, meaning that your mind is spinning a million miles an hour and most often repeating mental patterns or habits that are unhealthy, undesirable in your life. One way to work with this is to literally breathe, move, and sound. Because then this moves energy from the third eye, from the head, down into the body. So it brings us deeper into our human experience, into our bodies, to be able to integrate all of the elements into our being. When one of the chakras or one of the elements is dominant in override, it's less than ideal. Move your body, breathe, and sound. This will help move energy and attention from the mind down into the body. So that could be just moving your body gently. Shaking is a really good way. Taking deep breaths, exhaling the breath out, humming, speaking out loud, shouting if that feels good for you and you're in a place you can do that. But that helps to bring energy into the other chakras of the body and also begins to incorporate other elements so we can move out of the mental override pattern. Breathe, move, sound. When we are experiencing an emotional wave, part of what happens is the mental body hooks in to the emotional wave, and then they're working together in a dysfunctional pattern. Emotional waves on their own last about 90 seconds. But part of what happens when we're in an emotional experience is that then the mental body hooks into it in an unhealthy way and repeats the pattern and the cycle and gets stuck in an emotional habit loop. And part of what that looks like is if I'm in an emotional experience and then my mind jumps in to say, oh, well, this is just like when I was a child and I was left alone and I was afraid and I felt abandoned and rejected and blah, 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 blah. So the mind story is hooking into an emotional activation that I experienced. And now they're working together in an unhealthy pattern. Working with the power of the emotional body on its own and staying in the pure power of the emotional body or water is to be with the experience, to breathe with it and not let the power of the override mind carry you away from whatever it is. And part of the way to do that is to stay in your senses, to experience what you're experiencing, to stay in your sensual body rather than letting the mind, the monkey mind, hook in and say, oh, well, this is just like blah, 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 getting dragged down a dark alley of your emotional body. In working with this, talking about sensations can make a huge difference of being able to stay in the experience and to ride the emotional wave rather than getting dragged away by the mental body and stuck in an unhealthy habit loop. So what that would look like is I'm noticing there's heaviness in my belly. I'm noticing I feel tightness in my solar plexus. I'm noticing I want to drop my head forward and my shoulders forward, and I'm noticing that there's just a heavy energy on my back. I'm noticing. So this is talking about experience in the moment rather than the story and the past experience that the mental body will bring into an emotional experience. Staying with senses and not necessarily what we would call emotions. I feel sad. I feel lonely, because that activates the mental body even more. Talking heavy, light, dark, cold, hot, sparkly, tingly, piercing. Experiences of things that you could actually experience in your physical body. I feel sad is not an experience of senses. It is, unfortunately, a mental body word that we use to describe emotions. So learning to engage more fully with the senses that you are feeling is a practice that, again, the more that you practice it when you're not in a stressed state, the easier it is. Like, as you're listening to this podcast, what can you tell me about the experience you're having in your body? I feel the balls of my feet are on the floor. My hips are resting on an exercise ball. My hands are touching the tops of my thighs. I feel a tightness in my throat. I feel an excitement in my solar plexus. Excitement isn't a sensation word. I feel a bubbling lightness, kind of sparkly feeling in my solar plexus. So you could see, even as I was trying to demonstrate, my mental body tried to jump in to figure out what I could say instead of staying in the experience of my senses. So this is a powerful practice that will give you access to the creative power of your emotions, which the element of water is life. Right? We need water for our own bodies. We need water to grow plants, to support animals, right? It is necessary to create life in our world. And the same is true of our emotions. Learning to work with this creative power in our system and unhook the ways that we've been conditioned that the mental body overrides or dominates our emotional experiences, and being able to work with the emotional body as a creative powerhouse, yet learning to work with it in a way that is often totally foreign to us. In working with the override pattern of the mental body that I've talked about, the place of power in that energy is verticality, is up and down energy. Yet, when the mind is in override, it's like a steamroller or a spiral where it's spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. The key to be able to change that pattern is to be able to go into your vertical energy and get clear, get more grounded in your body, move the energy from just your mind and your head down into your heart, down into your body, and that's going to ground you in your present moment. Then the energy of reaching up for inspiration, for the higher mind, for intelligence and intuition to come into whatever you are working on. The element of space or ether in this system is where the infinite intelligence source or creator comes from. So in this practice of rooting down and reaching up to inspiration, we are reaching towards our highest selves for the highest possibility of our own experiences in our own lives, in our communities, and in the world. Ideally, you can see from the way that I have presented this material that we are looking to work with the mental body and the emotional body in a way that empowers us as humans to be true to ourselves, to be in a healthy, heal, hold state, to be able to hold ourselves, our mental and emotional capacity in how we relate to ourselves and to each other and to the world. So the ideal situation is that we are learning to work with our emotional bodies, our emotions in a healthier, healed, more alive and enlivened way. first in relating with ourselves and our own emotions, and then how we are connecting with others. And the same thing with our mental capacity, that we are using the power of our intellect and intuition to align ourselves with the greater good of ourselves and the world. Working in harmony with the masculine and feminine forces of water and space to work in harmony with, specifically in this practice, the sixth chakra of the third eye and the second chakra in our bodies, working with our creative powers, our emotional bodies, our humanness, and also the vision of our divine selves through the sixth chakras. So we are looking to work together with these elements, with these practices to come into the greatest alignment, harmony with ourselves and each other. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions about this episode, if you're on YouTube, you can post them in the comments or find the post on Instagram and you can ask your questions there. If you're receiving this by email, you can email me back questions and I can clarify in further episodes or on social media. You may have noticed in the last few episodes, things have been shifting. And one of the things I recognized in my own practice was I was holding fear about the truth of what I am here to teach and what I am here to do, thinking that I was going to upset people if I spoke my truth and I taught the body of wisdom that I am tapped into, aligned with living and teaching in the world. And I have shifted out of that state of fear because I believe it is incredibly important at this time on planet Earth to support as many people as possible in their embodied spiritual awakening. And like I said at the beginning, what that means is awakening our divine selves in and through our physical human bodies and experiences to create greater harmony in our own lives and in the world. And this is more important now than ever. I am happy that you are here. I hope that you have enjoyed the new direction that I am going with this show in speaking more powerfully about the traditions and teachings that I am here to share to empower you to shift your lived experience into a state of greater ease, empowerment, and aligned with love. Thank you for being part of our community. I'm honored to support your embodied spiritual awakening. Are you ready for a personalized Rites of Passage in Sedona with me? The Rites of Passage is an extraordinary 2-day private retreat in Sedona designed to support your embodied spiritual awakening. The pressure of the current global challenges are calling spiritual practitioners to embrace purpose, power, and pleasure on a profound level. If you're passionate about awakening the divine within and are ready to embody your legacy, step into your leadership, and live your purpose, this in-person immersion is for you. Schedule your life-changing private immersion in Sedona at sedonasoulsisters.com/purpose. Leave a review and follow on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, breathe gently, listen to your guidance, and create miracles.